Thanks very much, Vicky, and it's great to be here, and I do want to give you a glimpse into the future. But let me start by taking you, let me tell you a story from my past. Once upon a time, there was a thing called international travel. Some of you might remember it, right? And a few years ago, I went on a holiday to Sri Lanka with my parents, and it's a country where I was born, but I hadn't been there for more than 30 years. So as you can imagine, it was quite an amazing experience. Sometimes I felt inspired, sometimes I felt crowded, sometimes I even felt tall. It was great. You know, Sri Lanka is more famous for tea than coffee, but really, it's just a country of 24 million short blacks. So, why am I sharing this with you? Not because I think you want to see my holiday photos, but if you do, I've got a whole other slide deck prepared, so come up to me afterwards. But I want to tell you about a conversation that I had on the very last day that I was there. I went with my dad to visit one of his old school friends. So that's my dad in the middle of the photo with the camera around his neck and his school friend standing next to him. But on the far left of the photo is his friend's grandson, Rajiv. He's a giant by Sri Lankan standards, he's 5'6", and he works in IT. Now, it doesn't mean he works in a call center. He set up a software company with 3 of his mates. It's done really well now. It's floated on the US Stock Exchange because what they do is they analyze satellite photographs of shopping center car parks. And looking at the traffic coming in and out, he can tell a retailer where to build, where to expand, what are the best opening hours, even what products to stock in each season. And in Australia, they've got clients all around the world. Here, they work with Target and Woolworths. There are a lot of people who will tell you how the world has changed. But I reckon when a bloke in boardies and sandals, working from his home office in Colombo, Sri Lanka, can tell me what I can buy in my Woolies in Mount Hawthorn, that's when we know the world has changed. Do you agree? And there's some people here who already know this, and you're already doing it. But I reckon it's changed in 3 big ways. It's fast, it's flat, and it's free. Okay, so let me tell you what that means, and I'll tell you what that means globally, and then we'll narrow it down a little bit and talk about what it means for Australia and for us here in Joondalup as well. So I want to give you some big picture ideas, and then we're going to have a panel discussion as well with Cecily and Rachel as well, and ask us some detailed questions about this as well. So let's start with free. So we know that things that used to cost a lot now cost a lot less. Sometimes they're free. You know this if you've downloaded a song on Spotify or Apple Music instead of buying a CD, or you download an ebook to your Kindle instead of buying a paperback. Oh, I always look around at this point to go, are there any Gen Ys or Gen Zs in the room who are going, what's a CD? What's a paperback? Actually, true confession time. Who's ever walked into a shop, tried on some clothes or tested some technology, knowing fully well that you're going to go home later and buy it online for half the price? Yeah, okay. Every time I ask a question, more people put up their hands, especially as a result of COVID. But here's the thing, we all expect more for less. And a big part of that is, of course, technology has made things cheaper. It's also made things faster. Do you know there was more computing power in the first digital watch than in the spaceship that put a man on the moon? Right? So can you just imagine? Oh, actually, let me just check something here. Are there any Gen Ys or Gen Zs in the room? So 40 or younger? Can I see a show of hands? Yeah, okay. There's usually a few. Yeah. There's usually a few aspiring Gen Ys as well. For the Gen Ys in the room, first of all, thank you for still being here. But also, I need to tell you what a watch is, or what it used to be. So it's this mobile device that we had in the 20th century. It could tell us the time and nothing else, right? Which is crazy, isn't it? Such old technology. But it's like this, putting a man on the moon. In a few years' time, we'll be able to send people to other planets far beyond our solar system. Quick show of hands who'd like to get in a spaceship and go to another planet? Yeah, there's always a few. Yep, okay. Who can think of somebody else who'd like to put on a spaceship and send to another planet? Yeah, okay, yeah, right, good. Don't point to them. So it's the same with me. So for me, it's like, bye-bye Kim Kardashian, what? Okay, that's not very fair. Any of the Kardashians would do, but here's my point, right? We don't have that technology, but that's not the problem. Here's a problem with that whole Kardashians in space scenario. And some of us here will recognize this in our own businesses and our personal lives. In a few years' time, you'd be able to get in a spaceship with Kim and Chloe and Courtney, head off to another planet far beyond our solar system. But before you get there, long before you get there, you'll be overtaken by another spaceship that left Earth years after you did, but with better technology. So why would you get on that one? You might as well wait, right? But this one's got the same problem. Before it gets there, it gets overtaken by another spaceship, and so on. The paradox is, it doesn't make sense for any one of them to leave Earth, and yet, until one of them does, nothing happens. Right? And I bet you think that's a bit weird, but you probably do the same in your professional life, maybe even in your personal life. Yeah, I got the iPhone 11, should upgrade to the 12, but no, Apple will bring out the 13 soon, so I'll wait. I need a new iPad, but no, Google and Samsung will bring out something that's a phone and tablet and glasses combined, so I'll wait. The pace of change gets in the way of us making progress. That's not to say that we should give up technology. Technology has made a huge impact in our lives. In fact, I'd like to know what technology has most changed your life. So this is the first chance for you. If you haven't already, sign up to Slido. Go pull out your phone, go to Slido. You can either snap the QR code or you can just type in Slido and put in Future Joondalup. And I wonder, what technology has most changed your life? I'll give you a few seconds to do that, and then we share some of the results. And it doesn't have to be groundbreaking technology. So for my mum, she was a traditional 1950s housewife, and she said a washing machine changed her life because it gave her back hours every week. So it doesn't have to be something magic. For me, having a Fitbit where I can track my running and have that available for my healthcare providers has been a significant change to my life. All right, so let's see how we go. I'll play a little bit of funky music in the background while you're responding. Okay, what have we got? Phones, iPhones, internet, social media, Outlook, electronic toothbrush, yeah. NBN, fantastic. You hear a bit more about that from Rachel. Video calling, Outlook, fantastic. Great, so thank you for playing along. All right, so technology has made a big difference to us. The other thing that's happened is that our world has become flatter. So we talked about free and fast. The internet's broken down barriers between people and companies, even with countries. Look at this map here. Valerie Pieris pointed out there are more people living inside that circle than outside it. Right? So almost 8 billion people on the planet, almost 4 billion of them live inside that circle. China with 1.4 billion, India 1.3, Indonesia 250 million, Bangladesh 160 million, Sri Lanka, where I was born, much smaller, further down the list, 24 million. Same size as Tasmania, same population pretty much as all of Australia, right? And you can see how the power shifted in the last 200 years. In the 19th century, it came from here, from the muzzle of a musket. The 20th century, from here, driven by the dollar. And the 21st century, it's coming from here. This is true people power. And the reason this is important for us is because with people power comes economic power. So if you think about most of the last century, our world economy was dominated by 7 countries. So we know them as the G7, the USA and Canada, the UK, France, Italy, Germany, and Japan. But PwC reckons that by the end of this decade, the economic power of the G7 will be matched by what they call the E7, the emerging markets. that will match that economic power. So we've got Brazil and Mexico, Turkey and Russia, India, China and Indonesia, less than 10 years away. And then if you look ahead another 20 years, when the economic power of the G7's faded, we're going to have another 7 countries, the frontier markets, the F7, which will also share that economic power. Just look at these countries, Peru and Colombia, Nigeria and Morocco, the Philippines, Bangladesh and Vietnam. This is what our world will look like a generation from now. So, if you look at those G7, E7, F7 countries, there's one country that doesn't appear in any one of those lists. Right? So what does this mean for us here in Australia? Okay, to answer that, let me ask you a quick quiz question. Just call out the answer if you know. Which country is famous for watches, chocolate, cheese, and cuckoo clocks? Switzerland, yeah, right, okay. And there are a lot of benefits living in Switzerland. For starters, their flag is a big plus. Oh, actually, can I just stop and say a quick thank you to the people who laughed at that, because when I road tested that joke on my 16-year-old niece, she said if they laugh at that, they're just being kind. But here's my point, and I do have one, that some people are calling us the Switzerland of Asia, and it's not a bad analogy, because if you can think about anywhere in the world you could choose to live, especially as a result of COVID, but even before that, what sort of things would you look for, objectively? Maybe a country with a democratic government, a reasonably good health system that means higher life expectancy for most sectors of our society, not all of them, but for most of them. A country that even now with what's going on is relatively on a global scale, COVID safe. And then you look at a whole bunch of other things that make our little country, girt by sea, but right on the doorstep of this Asian century, one of the best places in the world to live, especially right now, if we take advantage of it. And we can talk a lot about technology, but it's what technology enables, and it's about people. There are more people now who say, I matter. And I don't mean in an egocentric, I'm the center of the universe kind of way. I'm sure you know people like that. I hope you're not people like that. But these are the people who are innovative and inspired. They don't wait to be told. They don't wait to be asked. They don't wait for permission. People like this. I'm sure you know some of them, but here's a couple that I don't know whether you come across them. These 2 young Australian girls who run Charlie's Crafty Kitchen. Who has heard of them? Anyone? Okay, a couple of people, yeah. For those who haven't, let me introduce you to them. So 8-year-old Charlie on the right, her 5-year-old sister Ashley on the left, they run one of the world's biggest YouTube food and cooking channels. And they just show kids how to make like icy poles and muffins and stuff, right? And it's free because it's all on YouTube, but they get millions of visitors every month. And because of all the traffic they get, they earn a little bit of pocket money from Google advertising. So this is what's happened to our world. And these are the sort of people who are now making an impact. So what does this mean for us moving forward? So if we do a little bit of crystal ball gazing, and I'm going to share with you just a few of the trends that have been happening and that are going to look at our future. And then, of course, ask me questions in the panel session. Here's one in healthcare. This is a little device you attach to the back of your phone, and it does an ECG yourself. So you can do that instead of going to a cardiologist or to a GP. This is not new. It was new 5 years ago. I dragged out this slide from a conference presentation I did to a big healthcare group 5 years ago when it was new. The reason I'm showing it now is because exactly this facility is available now in your Apple Watch. And last year, the TGA approved it for use as a medical device. So something that was novel and esoteric is now mainstream. Here's another example. This is to do with 3D printing. This project Daniel was set up about 7 or 8 years ago. It's kind of like a social network, but it's a social network that connects people in countries where they can't afford to get artificial limbs, prosthetics, connects them with primary school kids around the world who have access to a 3D printer in their school. And they will print an artificial limb and send it across the world for like about $50. Okay, now, that has become mainstream, and now 3D hip printing is happening in hospitals all around the world. Yeah, 3D hip, you can get a 3D hip printed. Artificial intelligence, machine learning is a really big area, and I don't think we really know how fast it's growing. Last year, there was a worldwide survey done that said that most employees said that 2020 was their most stressful year ever as a result of COVID. Probably not surprising, but you may be surprised to know that most of them would rather talk to a robot, artificial intelligence software, than a human about their stress, anxiety, and mental health issues. So AI is only going to continue growing. We talked about Cyber Check Me and cyber security, and you'll hear maybe a little bit more about that and ask questions. Most businesses don't realize how vulnerable they are. So more than two-thirds of them, or close to two-thirds of them, are vulnerable to being put out of business, not just a minor inconvenience, being put out of business with a cyber attack. And one last thing that I really want to emphasize is that COVID has not slowed this down. If anything, it's sped it up. And it's lucky that we had COVID-19 and not COVID-15. Imagine COVID-15 before we had the NBN rolled out, and imagine trying to do that sort of connectivity that we have now. Right? Digital transformation, which has been top of mind for many CEOs for the last decade, has suddenly been forced on us. And this means that for places like Joondalup, which are very entrepreneurial and innovative, it's a perfect time right now to be in business and to have this great infrastructure supporting you in business. There's some research done by the Kaufman Foundation, and they looked at what makes a city or a town an innovation hub. And they said there are 6 things, there are 6 critical things you need to create an environment where innovation thrives. And Joondalup, by the way, ticks all 6. So you need a strong local economy and the infrastructure around it. You need good jobs. You need jobs in the area. And people moving to the area for jobs. The other thing you need is education, particularly tertiary level education with things like North Metro TAFE and ECU. Funding from different sources. This one I think is really interesting. It's small and medium enterprises. It's not the big end of town. The innovation happens in small and medium businesses because they're flexible and agile and fast. And you need talent moving to these areas and being nurtured in those areas. So I really think this is the best time in the world to be running a business here with the support that you've got. I want to talk about the key thing that looking at that last one around talent is the skills for the future. Because the skills that used to be relevant for us in the past aren't necessarily the skills that are going to take us into the future. The Institute for the Future has done some research, and they've identified the top 10 skills for the future workforce. So you can go to their website and you can download their list of the 10 future work skills, but don't worry, I'm going to share them with you. But I reckon we've got a pretty smart group here. I reckon you can probably tell me what some of the skills for the future are going to be. So we're going to run another Slido. So what do you think one of the skills, or what some of the skills for the future might be? When I ask this question, people say things like creativity, time management, emotional intelligence. So they're the sort of things we're looking for. All right, I'll give you 30 seconds. What do you think the skills for the future are? Oh, good. Good. You're very quick. Fantastic. Okay, so adaptability, emotional intelligence, time management. Okay, I didn't give you a lot of time. Let me share with you what the Institute for the Future identified as the 10 skills for the future workforce. So, by the way, whenever I show this slide, lots of people want to take a photo of it. You have my permission to take photographs of any of my slides in my presentation, including this one. So take it, use it, share it, put it on Facebook, LinkedIn, Tinder, wherever you like. Okay, so I know I didn't give you a lot of time, but there's one that I don't think came up, but I'm sure lots of people were, you want to do it, you just didn't have time. How many people got that one? Yeah, okay, good. A couple of people at the back. What about this one, transdisciplinarity? All right, let me share with you what they are. By the way, looking at them, the skills that came up from the room, we got most of them. I've grouped them in 3 areas. The top 3 are about taking information in from the world, the next 4 are about how you use that information, and the last 3 are about dealing with people. So things like emotional intelligence is social intelligence, time management is cognitive load management, so we now can't shut off the world. We've got to manage the information overload. Transdisciplinarity, I'm just about to give you an example of that soon, but all these sort of things are the things that are going to make us fit for the future. The most important thing that we have to do, and I know Cicely will know about this and may talk about it, is making sure that whatever we do is solving problems. This guy here is the head of Google's global education. He goes around and talks to school kids, and he says he never asks them, what do you want to be when you grow up? He always asks, what problem do you want to solve? And I reckon that's a really important thing for us to be doing as well. So what problems are we solving for people? How are we helping them achieve their goals? Now, people have lots of problems. You don't have to solve all of them. You can pick and choose the ones that you're best equipped to solve. For example, I've recently started working with a personal trainer. This is the before version that you see here, right? And you know the way that personal trainers advertise? So they always say things like, are you overweight? I can help you lose weight. You never see a personal trainer that goes, are you fat and ugly? Would you like to be just ugly? Okay, so we get to pick and choose the way that we solve problems. And they're just different ways of doing problem solving and innovation. And I want to give you a couple of little ideas, and then feel free to ask me questions in the panel as well. So one is this idea of transdisciplinarity. It simply means getting an idea from one place, connecting it to somewhere else. It's happening in Joondalup in healthcare. So this is where a healthcare facility, Joondalup Hospital, said, how can we provide more of a hospitality experience in a hospital? And they're partnered with Quest in Joondalup, and they provide, as part of their maternity service, that if mum has a baby and mum and baba are fine, the next couple of days, if she has to stay in hospital, she gets moved to Joondalup, to the Quest, and has a couple of days there. Okay, and it's a simple way of actually improving the experience covered by private healthcare, and it's cheaper than keeping her in hospital. It's a clever idea if you use this idea of transdisciplinarity. Another one which I learned as a very young software programmer working from my first job out of uni was this principle that there's no such thing as a number 2. And this, my boss said this in the old days when it was very computer hardware was very expensive. And so we tried to squeeze as much data as we could into bytes and bits. And a bit is 0 and 1. And my boss said to me, if you've got something that could be on or off, because we're monitoring these devices, he said, no, there's no such thing as a number 2. It's never on, off, yes, no, true, false, male, female. Anytime you think there's 2, there's more options. And I reckon as a problem-solving strategy, that's exactly what you should do. Look for multiple options. And one last one is to take an outside perspective. So Intel, the computer chip company, way back in the 1980s, they were having this big debate at management level about should we go with product A, which was about memory storage chips, or should we switch to product B, which is microprocessor chips, or should we have some mix? And the senior management and the board couldn't decide. And they had this big heated argument. At one of the board meetings at lunchtime, Andy Grove, who was the president of Intel, he took his CEO, Gordon Moore, aside, and he said, mate, if we got fired and the board brought in somebody else to replace us, what would they do? And Gordon Moore said, oh, that's easy, they'd go to product B. And he said, well, that's the answer then. That's exactly what we should do. And I reckon that's a really good thing to think about for yourself. If you got fired, if you lost your job, what would your replacement do? Another way to ask the question is, if you want to put yourself out of business, what would you do as a competition? And you know what? You know the answer. Right? We're not necessarily willing to admit it, but we know. And it's useful to have that outside perspective. And this is what I mean, that everything, we talk about technology, but innovation, entrepreneurship is all about people. Does anyone recognize this? What is it? Pong. Yeah, so this is what computer games looked like when I was growing up. This is my stepson, Josh. He's the one on the left. And he loves computer games. And this is what computer games look like now on his Xbox. And the thing is, there's a lot of us who are leaders, and especially experienced leaders, who are still Pong thinkers in an Xbox world. And I reckon we don't have to know everything, because we've got these Xbox thinkers around us if we take advantage of them. One of my clients, Dr. Nikki Howe, some people here will know her, she's CEO of an aged care facility in Bentley in Manning. I was interviewing her for my podcast, and she said, didn't you employ knowledge workers for their knowledge? So the real question is, are you tapping into their skills and talent and knowledge? The challenge is that some of them might be a little bit difficult to work with. Another futurist wrote this book, The Freak Shall Inherit the Earth. And I won't ask you to put up your hand, but I reckon if I did that, some people go, yeah, pick me, I'm a freak, because nothing to be ashamed of anymore. It's like this. So Rajiv, he's not this billionaire business owner who decided to take on the Australian retail sector. He's just a bloke with 3 mates and a modem who saw an opportunity to do something different. And there are lots of examples in history of people who didn't see the talent in front of them. This, you ought to go back to driving a truck, was said by a talent scout to Elvis Presley. What about this one? We don't like their sound, guitar music's on the way out. Does anyone know who that was said about? The Beatles? Yep. What about this one? Can't act, can't sing, can dance a little? Yeah, Fred Astaire. Fred Astaire. That's. Thank you for that, because the last group said Shane Warne. And doesn't matter what he does, he will never amount to anything, was said by somebody who taught Albert Einstein. All right, so I want to finish up with this. Just want to say that it's easy for us to say we can't make a change, but we can. It's really important for us to say this is the time that we should be expecting the unexpected. And you don't need me to tell you, COVID has proved this butterfly effect. A butterfly flaps its wings on one side of the world, creates chaos elsewhere. Okay, and this is what we're facing in our world now. So let me finish up. I want to give you a copy of the book, I haven't forgotten that, but 2 quotations from 2 of the greatest thinkers of the 20th century. Albert Einstein said this, you might have come across it: imagination is more important than knowledge. And boxer Mike Tyson said this: everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Right. And there's some people who say, there's nothing you can do because something's going to come along and punch us in the face. It's not true. We have to take action even in great uncertainty. So as Vicky said, if you'd like a copy of my book, full digital download of the book, then send a text to the number at the top of the screen, and in the body of the text, just put in your first name, your last name, and your email address. This is an automatic system, so I don't get to see the responses, so don't send me a message in there. Just do that, and you'll get a full digital copy of the book, as well as I'll send you my regular updates about being fit for the future. So my last message before I hand back to you, Vicky, is just this one. Don't wait for the world to be perfect. Don't wait till you can line up all your ducks in a row, because that will never happen. Start before you're ready, and then you'll be fit for the future. Thanks, everyone. Please feel free to ask me questions.
So much, Gihan. Really inspirational speech there.